washing our hands as part of our hygiene, I think we've always known that is good for us. But we get away with not doing it most of the time because we have a certain degree of immunity to the diseases that are around us. So if we can think of the common cold or the seasonal flu, the entire society and each individual will have a certain degree of immunity from um, prior exposure to those diseases. Um, that is not the case when we have a novel virus. There's no prior immunity, and that makes us much more susceptible to suffer from the disease. So that is where that is a situation in which hand washing can play a particularly important role in controlling and limiting and slowing down the progression of the disease upon human contact. So there are different ways in which one can slow down that transmission by decreasing or limiting the long range travel, by decreasing or limiting the contact within a given population, and these are measures that we're seeing now. And then at a more sort of at a lower level, at the level of an individual, by keeping very stringent hand hygiene, because that is the way in which we will actually contract the virus for a given individual. So to expand on your question a little bit, what we addressed in this study was, okay, we all know this, hand washing is just generally a good idea, but how exactly would that affect the progression of the disease in this globally connected world? And that was the objective of the study, to model, right? This ultimately was a model, and we conducted the study before the current outbreak, how different levels of hand washing engagement could modulate or shape, control the way in which a global disease outbreak would progress.
And what did you guys find out when you modeled these different levels of hand washing and travel?
Yes, so the first thing that we tried to do was to set a baseline. And the baseline gives us some interesting numbers. So at any given point, 1 in 5 people under normal conditions will have their hands clean. 1 in 5. And that is for a variety of reasons, just because the hands do get dirty, and the time that it takes for hands to go from a state of being clean to a state of being dirty or having potentially a contagious agent in them is in the order of an hour or 2 hours. And the rate at which we wash our hands, or the frequency with which we wash our hands, is less than that. Mm-hmm. Under normal situations. So that gives us a baseline of about 20% of cleanliness in our hands. So what we investigated was, well, if a given population, that is the baseline, and we can model how upon human contact and upon human travel that disease can propagate, if we were to adopt or achieve different levels of hand cleanliness, how would that affect? And what we found, I have a table here in front of me, is that, for instance, if we were to achieve a level of cleanliness of about 50%, that would result in a 60% reduction in the progression of the disease. And at the time we wrote the paper, I was, as you said, published in December, our thinking was that is completely unrealistic. We would never be able to engage people sufficiently to to expect such high levels of hand cleanliness. Of course, now the incentive to wash our hands is there, and I think what we are seeing is that it can actually be a very effective way to limit the transmission.
Yeah. Um, and is it just soap and water, or did you guys look at the difference between that and like using a hand sanitizer, or are both like as effective?
So we did not really looked at that level of detail, hand sanitizer versus hand washing. We were uh, pulling information from the literature on how hand washing can limit disease transmission at the individual level. But the consensus seems to be that hand washing with soap for about 15 to 20 seconds, that is what is called effective hand washing, is indeed the most effective way to keep your hands clean, more so than the use of hand sanitizer.